Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today we have another exciting guest like we always have in this podcast. His name is David Wetterer, and he's running for office under an alternative party. He's going to tell us more about that shortly, God willing. So welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you, David. So let us get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Sure. Basically, my name is David Wetterer, and I am running for Indiana Secretary of State, and I'm running as a representative of the Green Party. And it's been a long, strange trip for me to get to where I am today. But without going into too much detail, I was a born and raised, conservative and attending a private school. And, once I went into public school for college, got slammed in the face with a dose of reality. And, at that point considered myself, a standard Democrat or a liberal. But, after basically the turning point for me was in 2016 with the superdelegates and how they impacted the Bernie Sanders run at the presidential, race. After I seen, Democrats do that, I swore them off for life. I almost swore off politics, but
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. But instead of doing that, I found somewhere else to do what makes me happy and make my community better. And that's what I'm doing with my run here for Secretary of State. I don't know if your listeners know, but here in Indiana, in terms of ballot access, in order to achieve that for one of the alternative parties, we have to run not a president, not a governor, but in Indiana, it's a Secretary of State. And we have to achieve 2% in order to achieve basically ballot-wide ballot access without having to do the petitions. Now, if we don't get that, we can still get on as individual candidates, but we do have to petition for 2% of what amounted of the vote cast for, whatever the position is. For me, and for president and governor, it would be 45,000 signatures, and that would be validated on a county by county basis. And, it would cost anywhere from $500,000 to $750,000 to do if I just outright hired somebody to do it. So I went with the write-in route instead of a long chore of getting on the ballot per se. But that's kind of a little bit about me and my campaign. What else do you want to know?
We got some questions for you. I'm glad to hear that you didn't give up on politics. We need more people in the alternative parties to forge ahead.
Yeah.
So we're glad you didn't give up. We're glad you used your discouragement to find an alternative.
Most definitely.
So for this office, who are your opponents and what are they like?
Yeah, so this specific office, I don't want to get their names wrong, so I'm just Googling real quick. But so my Democrat opponent is her name is Destiny Wells,
Okay.
and she is basically your run-of-the-mill moderate Democrat warmonger. She's got a lot of international experience warmongering. And the Republican candidate, we actually have a Republican currently holding the office,
Okay.
they are not going to be running for the office. A different Republican. It's inter-party drama over here in Indiana in the Republican Party. And he is a guy named Diego Morales, and he won the Republican convention for that nomination. He's your standard everyday Trump supporter, but the weird thing with him is he's actually been fired from the Secretary of State office as like an administrative worker twice. And but I guess he's a good networker because he won the convention. So and then I have a libertarian opponent as well. Shout out to Jeff Maurer. I don't know him personally, but we tend to get along. The Greens and the Libertarians at least casually get along. Third party solidarity kind of thing. But
Sure.
But he'll be running as well. And looks like I've got a fellow write-in candidate, Andrew Straw, attempting to establish a disability party, kind of doing the same thing I'm doing.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 of us here, so.
I'm glad to hear that Andrew Straw and the Libertarian and you are running. Challenge those guys.
Yeah.
So the office, how would you define its roles and responsibilities? In your view, what does the Secretary of State of Indiana do?
Yeah, that's a valid question. I actually had to look it up before I ran. And I encourage everybody to look up what exactly their position does, even if it sounds obvious. So, because you'll learn something. But obviously, the big thing that comes to mind with Secretary of State for everybody is election integrity.
Okay.
You're basically the auditor of the election process throughout the entire state. You oversee everything. You're in charge. You make the calls. That's kind of the big one that everybody thinks of. But on the back end, there's actually quite a bit of administrative work that goes on. They are in charge of our Bureau of Motor Vehicles, so the DMVs are. They're in charge of regulating car dealerships and licensing those businesses. And there's a few other small administrative things, but those are the big 3. So.
Okay. Given that, how do you plan to implement your green vision? The Department of Motor Vehicles and Green Party is not a natural link to many people. So how, and all the other things there might be, so kindly explain how you plan to implement the green vision shall you get elected to this position.
Certainly. So how those things kind of relate to what we do here with the Green Party. So in regards to election integrity, obviously we really work hard to try to make our party, as best integrity-wise as possible. We only take donations from human beings. We don't take them from businesses or PACs. So we don't take dark money or anything like that. So that's one of the things that, we stand for and that we'll bring to the table. Another thing that we also advocate for is instant runoff voting, or ranked choice voting, as people like to call it, and proportional representation. Essentially, if I were to win this race here, I can stand on my platform of proportional representation and ranked choice voting, as something that the people understood and liked about it, and something that we should implement there. In terms of actual implementation, that's going to take some help, but being the major officer has its big ways to pull strings behind. If people think I think something, they're going to be like, oh well, we would just better do what he says because he won that election on a write-in, So in regards to the license branch, here in Indiana, we're actually experiencing a surplus in state taxes,
Well, that's
and
good.
yeah, I mean, that's a good thing, right? And people are getting refund checks because of it, which is also a good thing. The bad thing is, we have this amazing budget surplus, but we have lots of things that we should really be spending it on instead of refunding it back to, the citizens. And, two of the biggest things, I can point to here, is going to be the employees at the license branch, state workers, they're getting paid, like, I think $14 an hour. I know where you're at on the coast. That's nothing here. That's barely treading water, if that. And that's kind of what state workers are getting paid across the board. They need a raise. They haven't had a raise in over 20 years.
Wow.
And then our teachers need to be paid more as well, while they have, received incremental raises, a lot, and they've, protested for it and striked for it. Everybody understands that here. Our neighboring states all vastly outpay teachers in comparison to what Indiana pays them. We're talking at minimums. I think it was the smallest is like Kentucky pays $7,000 more than we do a year for their teachers, and I just think that's ludicrous. And we should, before just giving all the money back, that's are two of the places I would like to focus those funds on. And then another thing that the Secretary of State actually does, and I didn't bring this up, is they actually help to regulate the stock market here on an interstate basis. And a lot of people don't know this, but only about 56% of Americans own any stock whatsoever. The wealthiest 10% of Americans own 89% of the market, and the richest 1% of Americans already own 53% of the stock market. So that is fine, I guess, if you're one of those people that own all the stock market. But, what it does is it escalates income inequality. And, there's, the people at the bottom, they don't have any kind of, additional means to acquire more stocks because their stocks aren't performing, if they have any at all. So what I would like to do is champion the transition away from private ownership via stocks, and instead, towards democratically controlled worker-owned co-ops. So what that would look like basically is, any new businesses that would be coming into being or being licensed, it would be basically, I could, as the Secretary of State, I could okay that licensure, but I can also recommend that, hey, instead of, sole proprietorship or, whatever public stock options, ask the employees if they have any interest in ownership, of the business, and think of that as an opportunity, to lower your startup costs and, help get the business running a little bit quicker, by getting, your individual employees interested in, ownership and, eventual, success of the business. How far that can go, I don't know. But again, if I'm elected as a write-in and I'm telling that to people, they're going to listen because, more than 30% of Hoosiers wrote me in that ballot. So, there's a few different things I can do. There's some influence I can have. Ultimately, though, the Secretary of State is an administrative office keeper for the people of Indiana, essentially. So.
Sure. So how do you plan to get the voters to come out? What is your campaign strategy?
Yeah. So obviously we're kind of a low budget campaign. I have a whole lot of contacts that I'm going to be calling here within the Green Party. Part of the benefit of running with a party instead of as an individual is, you can, with their permission, access, their membership lists and, give them phone calls and let them know you're running and, ask them for their support and donations if they want. So, I'm going to be doing a lot of that here in the coming weeks. So far what I've been doing, there's been a lot going on, sadly. I've been going to, a lot of the, abortion, rallies that we've had here in Indiana, and I plan to go to some more. I've been going to Pride events and speaking to people there, all over Indiana, and I plan to go to some more. There's actually a few scheduled outside of Pride Month, which I found odd but fun at the same time. Because I'm always down to party for a Pride. But, just kind of working, within the networks that are offered to me, initially here, and social media networking as well has been really big for me. And in case I haven't mentioned it, I've set up a really nice website, davidwetterer.com, davidwetterer.com. Feel free to check it out, and you can get in touch with me there. But later in the summer, and as we get closer, I'll definitely be. We have a special session coming up in the state legislature here in Indiana in the next couple of weeks, specifically regarding an additional refund, and the supermajority Republicans want to make it a pro-life state officially, so we're going to be protesting that. We'll see how that works, but I'm going to be there every day, and that's all I can do, and I'm going to be representing every single person that is willing and able to write me in and, donate to my cause. And, it won't be for lack of being heard. I refuse to let not being heard be the reason that something happens. So, we'll look to be heard and communicate appropriately, and, and then we'll try to get as much, promotional time and, some advertising and some signage out there as it gets closer to, as the laws allow. And, there's a lot to it. It's my first campaign. So if I sound kind of, new to it, it's because I am, but, I'm learning and getting better at it every day, and I'm excited about it too.
Excellent. That's awesome. So the best way for our listeners to support your campaign is to go to that website you mentioned before?
Yes, davidwetterer.com. davidwetterer.com.
Excellent. God willing, I plan to put that into the show notes.
Excellent. Thank you.
So, David, thank you kindly for coming on the podcast today. We appreciate you sharing the exciting things you're doing in your campaign.
Hey, not a problem. I appreciate you having me very much.
We wish you all the best in the campaign and all your personal and professional endeavors.
Hey, thanks again, and same to you. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and give yourself a voice, give yourself a choice. Vote green.
There we go. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.